All right, well, my name is Richard McElhenney. I'm a senior at Salem State College. My major is history with secondary education as a minor. I'm interviewing Ryan Arundel today for Dr. Darian in his oral history class. Ryan was born in Salem, Massachusetts, right here, and he is a specialist now with the National Guard. His MOS is 19 Delta, a Cav Scout. He has 2 tours in Iraq in 2003 to 2004 and 2005 to 2006. He's arguably a freshman, and his major is criminal justice. I guess like the first question should be asked is, why did you decide to join the military and the Army in general?
It's always been my idea to join the military. I wouldn't necessarily say it's because of September 11th. I remember I was 15, trying to see if I can just go to a summer basic just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
So I figured it'd be a good step. I mean, I didn't necessarily think I was ready for college right after high school. I couldn't see the reason of trying it out, failing, being out a couple $1,000s. So I went to the military, and it got me squared away for the rest of my life, I think.
Did your parents and family support you in this?
My mother was a little hesitant, but she agreed with me because it's the one thing that I wanted to do, that I thought of myself, and I got all the information, did all the research, and found out what I wanted to do, and then went ahead with it.
What do you think was the hardest transition into the military for yourself?
The detail. Because you could forget one little thing, one little piece of paper that has nothing but a few lines of information on it, and your whole day's ruined. And every person above you, from the time you enter basic to the time you're in a regular unit, every single person above you will make your day worse just because you forgot that piece of paper.
I gotcha.
Details are very important.
And when you came back on leave, was there any transition back into a civilian kind of style life, or?
The biggest transition, time on your hands and friends, because I was 18. I was 18 when I first went to Iraq. I was 19 when I first came back. So high school was still high school mentality, and the ways of living was still there. And I'm used to hanging out with, in the military, age doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So you're friends with guys who are mid-20s, upper 20s, 30s and stuff. So when I came back home, it was tough to go back to old friends and realize that what you're doing, and just try to get back in the old ways, I guess. That's the hardest part.
Do you think that the civilian population is well informed about military decisions at this time?
No.
No?
No.
Why not?
Bad news sells. And the decisions, the information that the population is getting are from the media. Anyway, I mean, they could say they're talking to the commander on the ground, but it's through the media. So when this war started, everyone, after 9/11, everyone was patriotic. Go get them. Let's get back at them. Let's do this. And that started to die down, and the media kind of gave this, found out some bad things, some questionable things that happened over in Iraq, and with our president, and they realized that started to sell. They're just gonna keep on spinning it, keep on spinning it, keep on raking in the money. It's sort of like a monster they started and they can't control now. And a lot of the decisions can't take full truth, because a lot of the times the stuff that happens over in Iraq you never hear about. The good stuff, the smiles and stuff that you never hear about. But if there's something questionable that happens and they don't know which side happened, who's at fault, automatically it's the Americans.
What was the training like for your specialty?
Very intense. My specialty, my MOS is what it's called, is recon. Doing a lot of scouts. You're never really by yourself, but you have to be at times. It could be from a 2 to 3 minute team out on a listening post or an observation post in the middle of the woods, and all you have is you, that couple other guys, and a radio and your weapons. And you could be looking at a whole division of the enemy, just watching them. So the best way they taught you all that. They taught you how to survive in the woods for a couple of days up to weeks. Basically how to survive. I mean, it was very intense. It was 4 months altogether, but there wasn't really any breaks. It was just 4 months.
Was it anything specifically designed for Iraq or desert warfare?
When I went through, the Army was still in the conventional warfare phase. Like anything military history shows, is combat evolves from two people standing in lines shooting at each other to that first guy that said, "Hey, let's hide behind this tree and shoot," to cover and concealment. So through Korea and Vietnam, it was more of like a conventional jungle warfare, and urban combat really didn't come into play. When I started going through, our drill sergeants knew we were going to be going over there, and they got us into that training too, with mount training. Mount training is what's the urban assault training.
Okay. What was your unit's responsibility in Iraq when you weren't engaged in warfare?
It depends on different tours. My first tour, when we weren't engaged in combat, just to secure everything, just try to investigate. You're doing a lot of investigating because you got to try to figure out who your enemy is. That's one part, and but we had to provide security for what's called the Hajj, and that's when that's the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Okay.
And for a while in Iraq, when Saddam Hussein was in charge, it was like only him and high-ranking Iraqi officials could actually make that pilgrimage. He wouldn't allow anyone else to go. And that first year was the year that it was open to anyone and everyone. So there was so many people, and we had to monitor that to make sure we weren't letting high-ranking officials from Saddam's regime get out, or high-ranking officials from Al-Qaeda who were there try to get out of the country too. So it was a lot of work, and we were all up and down the Syrian border, the Jordanian border. We spent a lot of time there.
What was your cultural reaction to your tours in Iraq?
A little shocked. They kind of give you a heads up before you leave on what to do. Just like anyone, they have a lot of different things than us. I mean, you're not supposed to show your bottom of your shoe. That's very disrespectful to them. Bottom of the shoe. It's not only that. I mean, they're just so far behind the rest of the world. Little things. It can be shocking at times, and the biggest culture shock is when you come back home, though.
Did you have much dealings with the Shiites and Sunnis while you were in country?
My second tour. The difference between the two tours is the first tour, you almost knew who you were fighting because the Iraq Republican Guard, and they still had fight left in them. They still thought they could fight toe-to-toe with us. So you didn't necessarily deal with Shia and Sunni too much. My second tour, that was when it was day-to-day basis. You got to know who you're talking to, what tribe you're talking to, where they're from, because a lot of it is Sunnis are the reputation that the Sunnis have is they're the terrorists. They're the ones who are fighting. Shia were the tribe, or the religion, I should say, that was oppressed by Saddam for so long. So their reputation is more that they're our allies.
Okay.
but that's all wrong. They'll turn on you in a second. A lot of them, all basically comes down to is they're both, whoever the radicals are, whoever the radical Islamics are, that's your enemy.
Okay. Did you notice any similarities or differences between the two?
Not really.
No.
Not really. It's so embedded. It's so deep. It goes back so far that just from a guy like me coming in, and maybe my commanders did, who talked to him more and who actually had the bilads with him and stuff. But they all treat. I mean, when you're face to face with them, they'll all treat you nice. They give you with a chai, their tea, with amounts of sugar. They give you some food and stuff. And but from just some of the only difference is one's Sunni and one's Shia.
Yeah. Could you identify them without asking them what they were?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You have to ask, and that's those are only the two main tribes. I mean, I was up in northern Iraq, so you had there was a little mix of Kurds in there, and the Turkmen from Turkey, who aren't Kurdish but they're from Turkey. So when you get down to it, it gets really dicey, and it can be really confusing. So.
Now, do the tribes themselves mix together well in most cases, or is it kind of like a conglomerate of let's join with each other to reach a goal?
Sunni and Shia have been fighting against each other for years. They don't know why they hate each other. They just know they do. And actually, some of the fights that I've witnessed, not really participated in, but I've witnessed, have been some of the worst fights have been between the Sunni and Shia. And I guess one positive thing that, once again, you won't hear on the news, but my second tour, my commanders and us, we tried working. We almost like forced them. It was almost like that. We used a tactic of taking two people, locking them into a closet until they worked the problems out.
Yeah.
And that's what we basically did. We made them sit down and talk with each other. If one side didn't show up to a meeting, we're like, all right, cool, jump in our trucks, and we'll bring you to their side. So we were forcing them to get together. And after a while, they almost realized that, like, they didn't really know what they were fighting for. They all had families. There's a ton of little kids, so, and what I think is parental instinct kicked in is you always want a better life for your kids. So, but at the end of our deployment, we actually had Sunni and Shia start working together and they actually captured 13 of their own insurgents.
Wow.
In the city. And it was a little savage. They ended up killing them, but a positive thing is they worked together.
Yeah.
And these two tribes have been fighting for years upon years.
Now, when you mix in stuff like the Kurds and the
Turkmen,
yeah.
Yes.
Does that like add an extra level of aggression between them? Is there any like certain tribes that follow along with Sunni and Shia, or is it just everyone for themselves and their best interests?
My opinion, Turkmen kind of just hung out. We did have some suspects we thought were Turkmen. But as Kurds were our allies. Unlike today, I guess they're fighting their own battle with Turkey right now, but we had... the Kurds had their own army called the Peshmerga, and we worked with them a lot. And the Kurds absolutely hate the Sunnis and the Shia. They just hate them because Saddam was just nasty to the Kurds. That's who he gassed, and that's who he used the chemical weapons on. So Kurds were probably our main allies. And they didn't really integrate too well with the other ones.
What experiences have you had coming back to the States from the civilian community? Has it been positive or negative?
For the most part, it's been positive. I think when I first got back, it was very positive, obviously, but I was almost taking it into offense of people who not agreeing with the war or protesting the war and stuff like that. And for a while, I was taking it to offense. It kind of got me upset, but I started to realize that, granted, they have their own opinion. They have the right to their opinion. I fought for their opinion. So I've kind of come to terms with that, but overall, everything's been very positive. We had a great parade in Colorado Springs. It was like the old scenes from World War II that you see. People hanging out the windows, hanging on roofs. It was flybys from the Air Force. It was very cool to be in. So yeah, overall, I'd say it was very positive.
How was the military training that you've experienced, whether for your MOS or while you're in Iraq? How has that influenced your life as a civilian thus far?
Better at details. And I guess the one thing I can keep in mind is, no matter how bad stuff, no matter how hard something is, either with school, with work, with family, with my girlfriend, I'm still home. I'm still going to sleep in my own bed at night. I mean, I can still walk down the street, not have to worry about bombs or being kidnapped or something. So I mean, I've learned that it's not always as bad as it seems, and that's what's helped me a lot too. I've learned how to problem solve a lot better. I can actually sit back and not panic about anything. If something comes up, I'm like, all right, well, let me just go do it. Don't give me this plan of a 14-page plan with drawn out counteraction plans and stuff like that. Just let me go do it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's done a lot of good for me.
Is there anything specifically you think the civilian population is misinformed about or misunderstands about the military?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the military.
Well, then about the war.
About the war, yes. I very much believe that. In my opinion, this is a war that had to happen, and it was coming for a long time. And I thought this last video that Osama bin Laden came out with, I thought that would clear up some things, I guess. And he basically told the public, the only way the fighting is going to stop is if everyone converts to Islam. And that's what it's about. It's not, people say, where's the weapons of mass destruction? He used them on his own people. They say we were lied to. Granted, I think the government went a little bit around people's backs, but in a way, President Bush said that he was going to go after any country and all countries who supports terrorism. And he got reelected for that too. Mm. So, I mean, but as for the military, I think most people know that if we didn't want to be there, if people didn't want to go to war, they wouldn't keep on signing up for the military. And I honestly think this is a war that needed to happen, because if we're not fighting them over there, we're gonna be fighting them over here. And lucky for the country that there's a lot of people, I mean, to this day, who are still signing up, still going through training, knowing that they will go to war. And it's not an easy thing to do, to actually sign. That's the hardest part about joining the military, is actually signing the papers and leaving. Because once you're already in basic, there's nothing you can do. You just got to do it. So that the hardest part is actually leaving. Not basic, not war. It's the actual step of leaving home. That is the hardest part. So.
Do you think it's better now for the military that it's a volunteer army at this moment, as it's been said, instead of a draft? Do you think that affects the mission and the war in general?
I think so. Just like back in World War II, how there was a rush of people to join up with the airborne, because you gotta volunteer. And there is a little bit more camaraderie and a little bit more trust knowing that person volunteered for it, instead of having a guy who is supposed to be watching your back, but he got drafted, so he doesn't really have all the he doesn't have all the drive that you have. So
Okay.
I think that, I mean, I guess some part of me is, I've often heard that there should be like a 2-year mandatory enlistment, just 2 years for everyone. And I think there's some people who don't need it, and there's a lot of people people would grow up really quick. I think it'd have a positive outcome too.
You think that would change the politics in American as a whole if
Yeah.
it's been 2 years?
You have to spend 2 years, not necessarily like in the infantry as a grunt, but in service, just because it helps people grow up a lot. And then you'd probably see a lot of change probably in crime rate, and employment rate, and I think you'd see a lot of good changes.
What are your feelings about politics at this moment, seeing that most politicians have never spent time in the military? Do you think they need to take a more hands-off approach to the military, or?
Yeah, they should. I heard something the other day from a friend of mine at work. He's an older guy. I think he served in Vietnam, but he goes, the last war we won was World War II. That's because the generals and the commanders on the ground were fighting that war. Because you look at Korea, Vietnam, and this war, even the first Gulf War, politicians were fighting that war. And that's what's happened. You don't really listen to the commanders too much. They have a lot of say, and we had guys watching our street fights from the Pentagon, just watching with the unmanned aircraft. So they have a lot of say, and I think a lot of them are using. It's just another way to how the media is spinning it. They're using the Iraq war to spin it bad and get more money. Politicians are using the Iraq war, making it sound a lot worse, so they can say they're going to be the savior of Iraq. Not a lot of them.
When you were in country, over here, it seems that people mostly think that the war was started for weapons of mass destruction, oil, to religious conflict or something. What was your feeling or the feelings around you, if you could talk about that almost? Like
About
why
what?
the war was being fought or?
Because they came after us. They came after us. Maybe not necessarily Iraq, but they were definitely funding the terrorists. They were definitely harboring and training terrorists. And we found terrorist training camps, and they still have them over there today. It's just hard to find. But so when I went over there and when I started fighting, the only thing I kept in my head was, it's just one less person who can harm someone over here, or harm my family over here. That's one less guy who can drive a car bomb into the North Shore Mall. Because it can happen anywhere, at any time. And it's just one less guy who can actually pull that off. And that's what I kept in my mind every day. Because as of the oil's never really been a big concern, especially for me. Because I know, even if this war never happened and Iraq just said, no, we're going to cut off oil, they wouldn't do that. They would lose all their money. So it's not necessary. They wouldn't do that either. Weapons of mass destruction. Like I said, he used them on his own people. To say that he didn't have them, you can't say that. You couldn't say that to someone from northern Iraq, because some of the stories that I heard from those people over there, just the stories alone will turn your stomach. So.
Do you see a difference between freedom fighters and terrorists?
I don't really know the difference, I guess. I mean, I guess you can, I wouldn't even really call them terrorists. Because, I mean, in a way, there's a certain respect. I have a certain respect for, I should say, the insurgents or Al Qaeda. Because they're men, they have families, they come from homes, and granted, what they believe in is very wrong and it's harmful towards us, but they believe in it enough to go and fight a war. And in counteraction, we believe in what we believe enough to go fight a war. So it's almost like, you know, of course what we think they're doing is wrong, but what they're doing they think is right. So it's almost like I almost have like a little respect for them. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily freedom fighters. We're not really oppressing them. We're not. All they really want is to do what their Bible says, and that's to kill the infidel, to kill anyone who's the non-believer. It's the same way with Catholic religion too. We did it to the Muslims in the Crusades. The only difference is Catholic religion is learn tolerance. And now who knows, maybe once this war is over too, they will. But there's a certain respect I have for them, I guess.
Do you think it's necessary to learn about your enemy culturally, religiously, before you engage in warfare?
Is it necessary? Maybe, yeah.
Did it help you in any way? Any of the information they gave you?
They didn't really give us too much information, like what they're fighting for, who they're fighting for, and stuff. That's just stuff I picked up on my own. The more information they gave us is signs of respect, and if you talk with them, if you you shouldn't look at their wife or something like that. It was more of like a cultural respect issues that they were teaching us on. It wasn't necessarily like a class of what to expect and stuff. A lot of it was just stuff that if you didn't hear about before you saw, it would shock you.
Okay.
So.
Is there a military community here on campus that you're aware of? Like groups of guys or women who get together?
I do not know. I mean, I know they have ROTC. And actually, a couple of the guys who were in the ROTC, that they're in my National Guard unit.
But like no veterans or anything like that?
Not that I've seen, no. And then, I mean, I can be honest, I don't really spend too much time on campus. I go to night school, I take 3 classes that night, so I don't really spend too much time on campus.
Do you think it'd be beneficial if there was a group like that? Do you think there's a certain need for kind of a camaraderie?
I guess. I mean, I don't really know. I don't think it'd hurt though.
Do you feel Salem State College community, the students, do you think they have a positive or a negative view on the military itself? Do you find, what you really want to kind of go for? Do you think I'm trying to say this without loading it too much, but is it the ideology, we support the troops but not the war? Do you feel that, or?
Yeah, I could see that. I guess you could say that they definitely support the troops, but not the war. But I do feel like there's sometimes when certain students I've come across, it will spark a little debate, I guess. As soon as you say that you're a veteran from Iraq or something, it does spark a little debate. But yeah, you'd be blind to say that Salem State isn't too happy with the war. But it can be tough a lot of times too.
Do you feel the military has become an international police force?
I think in the 90s, yeah. And now, no, because I guess what we're trying to do right now, what I feel we're trying to do right now, like in Afghanistan, we had the enemy, now we're trying to rebuild their country for them. I think that's just something that we're trying to do to keep good peace with not only Afghanistan, but the world. I mean, but in reality, like in Iraq and this war against Al-Qaeda, it's not we're trying to police them. We're trying to fight for survival. Because all they want to do, and they go after any country. They went after Spain, England, Japan. No, I don't know if they went after Japan, but they've gone after the other countries. And but they're gonna try to fight the war as America's the number one. America is the strongest country, so they're gonna target us first. And this is a war for survival, not policing up the world. It's a war of survival.
Did you have any dealings with the UN, like peacekeeping forces, while you were over in country?
UN wasn't really over there. I didn't really see them too much. I saw some of the food drops and a lot of the Red Cross, but not too much of like the peacekeeping forces.
Mahatma Gandhi said, "An eye for an eye will only make the world blind." What are your feelings on that quote?
On that quote, I agree with him, and I heard a quote from my history teacher actually saying, "You don't fight fire with fire," and I guess that's along the same lines what he's talking about. You can only talk so much. You can only take that punch from them and say, all right, listen, what do we need to work on? Let's try talking. But they don't have anyone to actually sit down and talk with. Their leader is Muhammad, like the Allah, the God. And you can't sit down and talk with them, so as you're sitting down and talking to someone you suspect is the leader, they're coming around your backside to attack you again. It's only so much. I mean, and that's one thing. I don't care who you are. You can only take so many punches until you punch back. Even Mahatma Gandhi, if someone was walking up to him, just kept on jabbing him and jabbing him and jabbing him, I don't care how long it would take, he would strike back or push back or do whatever he had to do.
Drawing experiences from the military, especially, as you were saying before, investigating the tribes and the information you received, how do you think that's going to, or how do you project that's going to help you as becoming a police officer?
Listen on both sides, definitely. Not to be too prejudgmental. It's tough, but I think that's taught me a lot too, because you had to listen. You had to listen to both sides. Stories, why they did that, who did this. So it's taught me to I think it's taught me to become a little bit more to a problem.
What expectations did you have for this project?
I was very hesitant. Actually talked to my girlfriend, my mother. And I guess it's a way for me to share my opinion. It's hard. It's very hard, I guess, in the school, in my classes, because there's such a little population of people who would necessarily agree with the war or support Bush. And I guess I was just going to use this as to share my opinion and share my experiences, maybe get a different word out there. Everyone's talking about questioning authority and the truth and stuff like that, but why not question the question?
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this conversation?
I'm proud of my military service. I wouldn't change a thing. If anything, I might have stayed in a little bit longer. I'm proud that I went to Iraq, and I'm still dealing with some of the stuff today, but it's a good feeling. And I think that's one of the reasons too why I joined the military is for, I guess, for a little pride. I don't know if it's selfish or not, but I can look back and say I've done good things, and I've seen the worst of worst, and I've seen the best of the best. I've seen extremes of both situations, and I believe I'm smarter than I was. I feel like I'm 22, but I'm much older than that and wiser. I attribute that to the military.
Well, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to interview you.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.